Hey guys, tonight we're not starting with a crown, a battle, or a hidden tomb in the sands of Egypt. We begin with something far more unforgiving. A road. Not just any road, but a monstrous, sun-blasted, bone-dry passage winding over 2,000 miles across a wilderness that didn't care who you were, what you dreamed, or how bravely you'd spoken at your kitchen table back in Ohio. A road that promised freedom and land and golden fields, and delivered cracked lips, broken axles, dysentery, and the slow erosion of hope. Before we go any further, take a second to breathe. Dim your lights. Pour something warm or something strong. Tonight, I want you to imagine not watching history from the comfort of a screen, but walking through it. Literally. Dust on your face, ache in your spine, heart full of ambition, and feet blistered from the moment you left your front porch. You're going west. That's the decision. You've kissed your mother goodbye, traded your shop apron for a rough-hewn hat, and turned your back on a world of brick streets and iron stoves. What lies ahead isn't a vacation. It isn't even adventure. It's ordeal. Packing your wagon isn't just about grabbing supplies. It's a slow, anxious war against the laws of weight, space, and human desperation. Your wagon, no more luxurious than a wooden crate on creaking wheels, is a coffin on wheels if you get it wrong. No suspension, no insulation, no brakes, just a canvas top and a prayer. You stare at your supplies. Flour, beans, bacon fat, rope, boots, medicine, maybe a saw. You cram it all in beside your children, your spouse, and your wife's battered upright piano. You insist on taking the piano. She'll want to play, you tell yourself. But that piano's destiny is sealed. It won't survive Kansas. By the time you hit the first river, it'll be left behind. Too heavy, too fragile, too full of false hope. The arguments start early. Do you need 3 crates of lard? Probably. Do you need the cradle? Probably not. What about your books? You cling to them until the day your oxen stall on a muddy incline and you have to lighten the load. Then, one by one, even your favorite volumes are tossed into the grass like forgotten dreams. Your animals, oxen, hulking beasts with dull eyes and the odor of wet straw, stand quietly as you fumble with leather reins and sweat through your only clean shirt. They're the engines of this ordeal, and they look at you not with affection, but with a kind of bovine judgment. They know what's coming. You don't. Day 0. You haven't left town. Already you're sunburnt, your fingers are splintered, and you've learned a valuable truth. You are not in control of this journey. You thought you'd sit inside the wagon like a prince, letting the animals pull you forward while you sipped water and admired the prairie. You were wrong. Within an hour of departure, you discover the truth of trail travel. Nobody rides unless they're ill or injured. Everyone walks. You walk beside your wagon because riding makes it break faster, and because the inside smells like unwashed feet, rancid pork, and the shattered dreams of everyone who tried this before you. The wheels creak with each jolt. Your spine aches from the jolting. Children scream, chickens cluck, and pots clang against the side of a barrel that's already sprung a leak. You walk because it's all you can do. And then comes the dust. It's not just on the road. It's in your clothes, in your mouth, in your soul. It coats everything, your hair, your bacon, your hope. You blink and see only brown haze. You breathe and taste earth. By mile 5, your boots, once proudly purchased in St. Louis from a smiling merchant, betray you. The leather rubs your heels raw, raising blisters like tiny angry volcanoes. You limp, and still you keep moving, because stopping is worse. The heat rises, and the trail stretches on like a cruel joke. 7 miles in, someone announces it with pride, and you nearly cry. 7. Out of 2,000, you collapse onto a sun-baked rock, your lungs scraping in your chest like an old bellows. Your oxen are chewing indifferently. Your children are already sunburnt. Your wife is staring into the distance like she's searching for the ghost of indoor plumbing. You thought you were headed to paradise. Instead, you've found something far older, far harder. This isn't a journey. It's a trial by endurance. And that, my friends, is only the beginning. Morning doesn't arrive gently out here. It hits like a slap to the face. Cold, immediate, and wholly unwelcome. You wake up on damp earth, curled beneath a blanket that smells like mildew and fear, your neck stiff from using a rock as a pillow. Something soft and ominous moved under you during the night. You pretend it was just moss. There's no sunbeam slicing through linen curtains to rouse you, just the groaning of oxen, the cries of an irritable toddler, and the unmistakable chorus of gastrointestinal discomfort from half the camp. Welcome to breakfast, now. Maybe you imagined something cozy. A campfire, crackling, the scent of bacon drifting through crisp dawn air, someone flipping eggs with a smile. That fantasy died around mile 2. What you get instead is yesterday's beans, still gritty with trail dust, served on a dented tin plate, lukewarm at best. The biscuit beside it could easily double as a weapon. You consider throwing it at a raccoon later. The coffee? Oh, sweet summer child, there is no coffee. Instead, you're handed a metal cup of vaguely warm brown liquid filtered through a rag that once dried your oxen's backside. It tastes like scorched dreams and pond water. You drink it anyway, because you have to. Because the only other option is the stream up the trail, the one with a bloated mule floating in it. Someone tries to be cheerful. They offer molasses. To sweeten the beans, they say, as if syrup can fix despair. All it does is turn the meal into a sticky, bitter glue that coats your hands and won't come off until Nebraska. It doesn't matter. Your hands are already caked in filth. One more layer just makes you feel like part of the scenery. You sit on an overturned bucket, chewing in silence. Around you, other families eat in grim ritual. A grandmother stares into the distance, eyes glazed. A father mutters something about eating all the salt pork at once and dying full. No one disagrees. A small child begins to weep softly. Another asks if there's sugar in Oregon. You lie. Yes, you say. Rivers of it. There is no joy in this meal, no comfort, only fuel, barely. And once the last bean has been scraped from the pan with a stick, it's time for cleanup. A task somehow more degrading than the meal itself. You rinse your plate with a splash of spit or a precious spoonful of water, then jam it into the wagon beside the cabbage barrel that now smells like chemical warfare. And that, dear listener, was the good meal. Lunch will be worse. Dinner? Probably non-existent. But you don't get to sit around lamenting your breakfast. No, you've got a wagon to wrangle and beasts to appease. And those beasts? They're not gallant steeds like the paintings show. They're oxen, 4 stubborn, flatulent blocks of meat on hooves, each one more disinterested in your fate than the last. You gave them sweet names once. Buttercup, Clover, Chestnut, Hank. Now you call them what they truly are. Useless, stubborn, fartface, and still Hank. They move when they want. Mostly they don't. They stare at you with empty eyes that whisper, "You're going to die out here, and it won't be my fault." You crack the whip. They fart in response. Sometimes they lurch forward, only to veer off toward a patch of poison ivy or a steep hill. You try to steer them. The reins are twisted, the yoke is crooked, and your patience died with your last dry pair of socks. They moo, loudly, constantly. One of them groans like it's practicing for the opera. Another makes a noise that sounds suspiciously like sarcasm. At night, you tie them to a tree and hope they don't tip the wagon, eat something toxic, or stage a slow-motion rebellion under the moon. But you need them. You desperately, utterly need them. Because no matter how much you curse, you cannot pull that 1,600-pound wooden coffin across the continent yourself. And neither can your 8-year-old son, who volunteered but cried the moment he saw his first blister. So you brush the oxen, feed them what little you have left, and whisper apologies you don't mean. When one of them limps, your whole party slows. When one collapses, your entire dream teeters. They say pioneers respected their animals, and they did. In the same way a prisoner respects the strength of the lock on their cell door. Because without the oxen, you're going nowhere, and right now, you're only 3 days in. It happens not with a bang, but a snap. A crack loud enough to silence the camp, to still the breath in your lungs, to make even the oxen stop chewing for a second. At first, you hope it was just a branch underfoot. Maybe someone dropped a barrel, but no. Deep in your gut, in that raw, trail-hardened place where instinct now lives. You know, something important just broke. Maybe it's the axle, that cursed wooden rod upon which your entire, rolling future depends. Or maybe it's the tongue, the long beam connecting your oxen to the wagon itself. You look down and see it lying in the dirt like a broken limb. Either way, you're stranded. The wagon slouches sideways like it's given up on life. Your children stare, too tired to cry. Your wife stares at you. And the oxen? Still chewing, still unfazed. Of course, you rushed to the back of the wagon, scrambling for your tools. You packed spares, didn't you? You think you did. You're sure you did. Except, didn't you trade one of them for apples back in Independence? Delicious, crisp apples, long gone now, eaten and mourned. What you do find is not helpful: a hammer, bent nails, and the lid from a butter churn that your child has been using as a drum. You want to scream. Instead, you laugh. A dry, cracked sound that worries everyone nearby. There's no mechanic, no roadside assistance, no blacksmith shop just over the ridge. The closest help is 30 miles behind you, and he's also broken down, probably muttering into his beard and regretting the piano he brought for his niece. You eye a nearby tree, wondering if a thick enough branch might work as a temporary fix. You whittle a piece of firewood into something axle-shaped. It holds for about 12 feet. Then the wagon groans, tilts like a wounded elk, and spills half a barrel of flour onto the dirt. White powder erupts into the air like a snowstorm of failure. Gone. Just like that. A week's worth of bread, biscuits, and bland comfort, now seasoning the trail for the next unlucky traveler. You feel eyes on you. You're not alone, remember. There's a whole wagon party with you. Families, strangers, people who smiled at you 3 days ago and now mutter "rookie" when they think you can't hear. One offers to help. The tone is friendly, but the eyes are smug. You force a smile, grit your teeth and say, "I've got it handled." You do not. Hours pass. You use words you never let your children hear. You invent new ones. You sweat through your last clean undershirt and sit in the dirt, defeated. Your fingers are raw, your knees bruised. The sun has already started sinking. Eventually, you manage to lash together a makeshift splint using rope, broken barrel slats, and what may or may not have once been part of your wife's washboard. It holds. Barely. The wagon creaks forward again, slower, more uncertain than before. And then someone says it. "Hey, where's the water barrel?" You stop cold. You blink. You look back at the road. And yes, there it is, glinting in the distance, rolling gently into a ditch like it's escaping this whole expedition. You left it behind. Of course you did. You trudge back to retrieve it, alone, head hung in shame, while the rest of the party pretends not to watch. But they're watching. They always watch. Judging. Or worse, pitying. When you return, dragging the barrel like a defeated soldier, you mutter something about keeping it accessible for the next stop. No one believes you. You don't believe you. You're only on day 3. The trail doesn't care. It stretches on ahead, indifferent, unyielding. It offers no comfort, no relief, just more dust, more heat, more pain, and your reward for surviving all of this. Your next challenge, because just over the next rise lies the river, wide, muddy, deep enough to steal everything. But that's tomorrow's problem. Tonight you sleep beside a wounded wagon, cradling a hammer, wondering what else can go wrong. And the trail whispers back, "You'll see." You reach it just after midday. The sun's high, beating down on your hatless head, and there it is, stretching across your path like a dare, wide, brown, moving fast, a churning ribbon of mud and menace. The river. There is no bridge. Of course there isn't. This isn't a road trip. It's a test of how many things can go wrong in a single afternoon. There are no signs, no guardrails, no cheerful ferryman with a price list and a smile. There's just water, deep, cold, and uncaring. You stare at it, heart sinking. On the far side, the trail continues as dry and dusty as ever. The land of promise waits beyond it. But to get there, you'll need to gamble with everything you own and everyone you love. You have 3 options, none of them good. Option 1, ford it. Drive the wagon straight through. No tricks, no floating. Just wheels in the muck, oxen in the current, you at the reins. The water comes up to your thighs. The riverbed is uncertain, rocks, holes, sudden drop-offs. You can't see the bottom. You don't know how deep it'll go. The oxen hesitate. One false step, one sudden lurch, and your wagon becomes a waterlogged coffin. You imagine the barrels breaking loose, your blankets soaked, your family screaming. Option 2, float it. You remember someone talking about this back in Missouri. Cork the wagon with tar, seal the seams, make it buoyant. It'll float like a boat, they said. You believed them. You were a fool. You try anyway. You coat the underside in pitch that smells like despair. You load your terrified children into the wagon and push off, praying it stays upright. It doesn't. Halfway across, one of the oxen panics, twisting in the yoke. The wagon shifts, groans, tilts, barrels roll. Your wife screams. A crate of supplies crashes overboard. Flour, gone. Salt pork, gone. A jar of pickled cabbage floats away like a sour lifeboat. You barely make it to the far side, soaked, freezing, missing one boot and all your dignity. The oxen crawl out of the water looking like drowned ghosts. Your children cry. One asks if Oregon has towels. You don't answer. Everything is wet. Your blankets, your clothes, your books, if any survived. Even your gunpowder, useless now. You try to start a fire. The wood hisses, steam rising, nothing catches. You're shivering, teeth chattering, lips blue. Then someone says it. There was a ferry, half a mile upstream. You want to laugh or cry, maybe both. But you're too tired. You slump beside the wagon wheel, clothes clinging to your skin, and you finally understand why so many people turned back. Why some simply vanished into the prairie. It wasn't the distance. It was moments like this. Moments where you lose not just food and tools, but belief. And just as you're beginning to think the worst is behind you, it hits. Fast, violent, without warning, dysentery. It doesn't announce itself with a gentle stomach grumble. It strikes like a curse. 1 second, you're chewing a piece of jerky. The next, you're doubled over behind a bush, praying for mercy. There's no toilet out here, no privacy, just your shame and the scrub grass. The others pretend not to hear you, but they do. They all do. Everyone gets a turn. You are just first. Your body revolts, your strength drains. The trail moves on without you. Your family waits, worried. Your children ask what's wrong with Daddy. Your wife brings you water that tastes faintly of the mule carcass upstream. You drink it anyway. No one talks about this part. The rawness, the helplessness, the way your body betrays you out here. You try to stand, but your legs feel hollow. You collapse. The wagon lurches ahead without you. You imagine dying in the dirt, remembered only as the man who didn't make it past mile 30. By sunset, you're a shell. Weak, pale, you can't eat, can barely speak. And then it happens. Someone else clutches their belly and sprints toward your bush. It begins again. One by one, your party succumbs. A quiet epidemic of pain and panic. You hear groans, sobs, dry heaving behind every tree. The trail offers no comfort, no medicine, no end. Dysentery doesn't kill dreams. It dissolves them, slowly, painfully, with every step that's harder than the last. And this is just week 1. Out here, the sky is not a friend. It does not paint pretty sunsets for your enjoyment. It does not grant shade when the land begs for mercy. On the Oregon Trail, the sky's a spinning coin, sun on one side, fury on the other, and you're stuck in the toss. You begin the day with a dangerous feeling, optimism. The air is cool. The prairie, for once, isn't trying to kill you. A bird sings somewhere. The ground is dry beneath your boots, and someone even jokes that maybe, just maybe, things are finally turning around. That's when the sky rolls its eyes and decides you haven't suffered enough. First comes the heat, not warmth. Heat. A searing, suffocating wall of it. The kind that melts your confidence and roasts your skin through your one remaining shirt. The sun rises like it's on a mission to cook the trail itself. Shade? None. Not a tree in sight. Just yellow grass and regret. You sweat until there's nothing left to sweat. Your clothes are soaked. Your hat is a joke. The oxen look like wilted statues, and your children go silent. Too hot to complain. That's when the mosquitoes arrive, swarming like they've been invited to a banquet. You slap, they laugh. You remove layers, then more. Then you stop caring who sees what, because dignity is no match for heat stroke. You consider walking in your undergarments. Someone already is. The trail looks like a fever dream. But then, just as you begin to adjust to this new molten reality, just as your body decides this misery is the new normal, the wind changes. It starts small. A breeze. Cool. Almost nice. You sigh with relief. That's your mistake. Because within minutes, the sky turns gray, then black. Clouds boil above the horizon like smoke from an angry god's fire. You try to get the tarp secured, but it's already flapping like it wants to escape the wagon and live a better life. You shout orders no one hears. Someone drops the firewood. Another chases a hat across the field. The storm hits. Not rain. Rage. It falls sideways, slams into the wagon like fists. The ground turns to sludge. The wheels sink. You sink. You scream for your children, and for a moment, you can't see them through the blur of rain and panic. And then, hail. Not pebbles. Not polite little plinks. These are grapes of ice hurled by the sky with the fury of a drunk god. One strikes your shoulder, and you stagger. Another pings off the coffee pot with such force your oxen try to lie down and play dead. You crawl beneath the wagon with 2 kids and a sack of beans, clutching a soggy blanket. Around you, chaos, wet canvas, thunder like cannon blasts. Someone's crying. Might be you. You don't know anymore. When it's over, it's not relief you feel. It's numbness. The sun returns like nothing happened. Birds chirp mockingly. A rainbow appears, cruel and perfect. You emerge from under the wagon soaked to your bones, looking like a forgotten scarecrow. Someone hands you a cup of warm liquid. You sip. It's bean water. Again. No one speaks. You're too busy wringing out your socks, salvaging firewood, and wondering if this is really worth it. You check your supplies. Damp flour, soggy maps, blankets that smell like mold and sadness. And then comes nightfall. As if the weather wasn't enough, your food now betrays you. The hardtack is cracked and crawling. The salted pork is growing a beard. You scrape off the mold and try to pretend it's seasoning. The water barrel, once a symbol of hope, now holds a stew of dead insects and wood rot. Dinner is a grey slop of beans, mystery meat, and something that used to be a carrot. You chew slowly, not because you savor it, but because your body refuses to accept another indignity. Someone finds an old biscuit. It's hard enough to be weaponized. You crack it open with a rock. Inside, a beetle. You name him Larry. Larry, tragically, is the most nutritious part of your day. You go to sleep on damp earth, in damp clothes, wrapped in a damp blanket. The oxen snore. The wagon groans. You stare at the stars and wonder if they're laughing at you. And somewhere, deep inside, you begin to whisper the unthinkable question: what if Oregon isn't even real? The sound is different this morning. Not the usual moans, grumbles, and coughing that echo through the camp like a broken chorus. This one is deeper, raw. The kind of sound that halts conversation, quiets animals, and makes children freeze where they stand. Someone is crying, not sniffling, not weeping. This is the kind of grief that comes from the gut, from a place so ancient it doesn't use words. You step out of your wagon, and the truth hits you before anyone speaks. Someone died last night. You don't need to ask who. The absence says everything. Maybe it was old man Jenkins, whose cough had become the soundtrack to your dinners. Or maybe the little girl who hadn't stood up in days. Or the baby born under a wagon wheel during last week's storm, still without a name. There is no undertaker, no priest in a pressed collar, no flowers, just a spade, a patch of hard dirt, and a circle of people who look like they've been awake for years. The body, wrapped in the least moldy blanket available, is lowered into a shallow grave. No coffin, no cross, just silence and necessity. The blacksmith, who also doubles as your preacher, says a few words, something about dust, eternity, the Lord's will, but even he sounds tired. Halfway through, someone coughs. Someone else mutters that you should get moving, there's still a long way to go. No time for mourning, the trail won't wait. Rocks are piled on the grave, not to honor the dead, but to keep animals away. You mark the spot with a piece of wood, carve a name if there's time, but you know the truth. The next storm will wash it clean. Within days, no one will remember what lies beneath the dirt. You wonder how many graves you've passed already, unmarked, unnoticed, forgotten. You try not to think about it. You pack up the wagon. You feed the oxen. You pretend. At lunch, your hands tremble. Not from hunger, but from something deeper. You stare at the same tin plate of beans and salt pork, and it tastes different now. Bitter, like guilt. A child asks, "Why isn't Grandma walking today?" You lie. Again. At first, the deaths shake you. They hollow you out. Then they become routine. One here, one there. An old woman who simply doesn't wake up. A young man crushed beneath a wagon wheel. A toddler who ate something he shouldn't have. Trail statistics tell you this is normal. 1 in 10 never made it. But numbers don't cry. Numbers don't sing lullabies at night to children who won't remember their sister. You keep walking, because that's all you can do. You whisper their names under your breath until even those begin to fade. Grief doesn't stop the trail. It becomes the trail. Every mile is paved with someone's story, a laugh that vanished, a voice that will never sing again. And yet you move forward, boots heavy with dust and memory, shoulders bowed not by packs, but by the weight of absence. You start to forget what day it is, what week. The trail has no calendar, only distance. You lose count of the miles, the meals, the funerals, until one day you realize something strange. You're still here, you're still walking, And that's terrifying in its own way. Because out here, survival isn't a triumph. It's just another burden to carry. The trail is quiet tonight. Too quiet. No wheels creaking, no pots clanging. Just wind. Just the low, soft whimper of someone having a nightmare 2 wagons over. You try to sleep, but something feels wrong. Then you hear it, a long, wailing howl, high-pitched, unearthly, and way too close. You sit bolt upright. Your first thought is, wolves. But someone nearby whispers, coyotes. Not like that's better. Coyotes don't kill with silence. They kill with mockery. They howl and yip like they're drunk and laughing at you. You grip your rifle a little tighter, not because you think it'll help, but because it gives your hands something to do besides shake, and that's just the start of nature's little welcoming party. You roll up your bedding one morning to find a guest curled up inside, warm, coiled and breathing, a rattlesnake. You freeze. It doesn't. Just flicks its tongue like it's judging your life choices, and slithers away as if to say, I'll be back. At midday, while refilling your canteen, you spot fresh tracks by the water. Too big to be a dog. Too wide for a man. Deep claw marks. Bear? Cougar? You don't know, and you don't ask. You just fill your water and back away like the shadows are watching. Because they probably are. The raccoons are worse. At least the predators hide. The raccoons, they unzip your supply sack like it's a party trick. They steal the last of your hardtack while maintaining direct, soul-piercing eye contact. One climbs into your wagon and steals your only clean handkerchief. You throw a boot at it. It throws it back. But none of them compare to the skunk. It arrives like a dignitary from the kingdom of doom, waddling confidently into camp, tail held high like a flag of warning. You whisper, "Don't move," but someone claps. Why? No one knows. Maybe madness, maybe hope. The skunk turns, pauses, and detonates a stench so profound it peels paint off wagons and hope off faces. For 3 days, everything smells like judgment. Your blankets, your clothes, your dreams. And somewhere in all of this, you realize something strange. The animals aren't your only worry anymore. Something is changing in the people. The man who used to whistle every morning. He hasn't spoken in days. Just stares at the horizon like it's mocking him. One woman mutters to herself constantly. You thought she was praying. Now you're not sure. Your wife hasn't laughed since Kansas. Your children keep asking questions you can't answer. Is Oregon real? Do people have beds there? Will the oxen come with us? You lie. You always lie now. One night you find yourself talking to the wagon. You didn't mean to. It started as a mutter. Come on, girl, you say, patting the wheel. Then a whisper, you're doing good. The wagon groans in response, and you imagine it understands. You name it. Clara, or maybe Maud. You're not sure. You just know that when everything else fails, she's still there. Wood and iron and stubbornness. Just like you. Others notice. They watch you the way people watch a horse that's starting to limp. You don't care. You wrap your arm around the wagon side at night like it's a friend, like it's listening. Because honestly, it's the only thing that hasn't let you down. You don't remember what day it is. Maybe it's been weeks, maybe months. Time, like everything else, has been ground into dust under your boots. But then, one morning, it's different. The hills change. The air shifts. People speak with cautious hope. The word passes from wagon to wagon like a whispered spell. Oregon. It's close now. You can almost taste it. Green valleys, fresh water, maybe even a roof that doesn't leak and food that doesn't come out of a barrel. Your pace quickens. Even the oxen seem to pull with more purpose. Or maybe you're hallucinating. Doesn't matter. You climb the last ridge with your breath catching in your throat, and there it is. The end of the trail, Oregon. But it's not what you imagined. There's no brass band, No cheering crowd, no settlers waving handkerchiefs and handing you loaves of warm bread. There's no town, no roads, no anything. Just rain. Cold, endless, soul-drenching rain. It pours from the sky like it's been waiting all year for you to arrive. The clearing at the end of the trail looks less like the promised land and more like a swamp. Mud as far as you can see. Trees hunched like judgmental old men. The other wagon parties, already here, already arguing over who gets the driest patch of misery. You step down from the wagon and your foot sinks ankle-deep into muck. The oxen groan one last time and sit down as if to say, "We're done. Forever." And they are. You glance at your family. Your wife looks like a ghost. The children are wrapped in blankets that haven't been dry since Nebraska. The baby is chewing on a rock. No one has the energy to stop her. Your wagon, faithful Clara, shudders, creaks, and collapses in a final gesture of defeat. The front axle snaps, the canvas splits, the frame leans sideways like it's whispering, "Let me die." You whisper a thank you and pretend not to cry. Someone hands you a shovel. "Welcome," he says. "Start digging." You think he's joking. He isn't. There's no house, no cabin, no shelter, just wild land and a vague suggestion that if you build fast enough, maybe you won't freeze to death before you eat your last biscuit. You dig. The mud is heavy. The rain doesn't stop. You try to build something, anything, but your fingers won't stop shaking. Your muscles are long past pain. They've gone numb. You look around. The people you traveled with are strangers now. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks. Nobody laughs. Nobody sings. They just dig. This isn't the end of the trail. It's the start of the next misery. More work, more rain, more unknowns. You stare at your children and realize the trail didn't deliver you to paradise. It delivered you to responsibility, to building, from nothing. You're not a traveler anymore. You're a settler now. And then it hits you. Not everyone made it. Not every wagon arrived. Not every grave got a name. You remember the people you left behind, the girl with the cough, the man who fell under the wheels, the boy who drank the wrong water. They didn't get here. But you did. You. Somehow. You.
And maybe that's worth something. Maybe it means you can survive anything, except one more salted bean. Those you're done with. Forever. Centuries before wagons carved lines across the American wilderness, power moved not by wheel or warhorse but through silk-draped halls and whispered vows. In the ancient world, marriage wasn't a union of hearts. It was a contract, a weapon, a lever powerful enough to shift kingdoms, build dynasties, and sometimes, when wielded with skill, topple thrones without drawing a single blade. And few understood this better than Cleopatra VII of Egypt. Forget the myths of seduction. The truth is sharper. Cleopatra didn't trade in beauty, she traded in leverage. Born into a world where Rome devoured territory like a beast with endless hunger, she knew survival meant more than diplomacy. It meant calculated alliance. When her own brother's court tried to sideline her, Cleopatra didn't beg. She didn't plead. She had herself smuggled, legend says rolled inside a rug, into the chamber of the most powerful man alive, Julius Caesar. It wasn't romance, it was opportunity. Egypt had gold, grain, ships, strategic ports. Cleopatra offered Caesar stability in the East, and he, already fighting a civil war in Rome, saw her as an anchor in stormy seas. With Caesar's backing, she reclaimed her throne, crushed her enemies, and birthed a son, Caesarion, whose very existence was a political statement. But even Caesar couldn't protect her forever. When he was assassinated, Cleopatra turned again to Rome, not as a widow, but as a strategist. She allied herself with Mark Antony, one of the three men vying for control of Caesar's fractured empire. Their union, partnership, love, propaganda, and policy all entwined, became a direct challenge to Octavian, Caesar's heir. Antony and Cleopatra ruled from Egypt like gods on earth. Together they commanded fleets, lands, and armies. They had 3 children, but most of all they had Rome's attention and Octavian's rage. In Rome, poets painted Cleopatra as an Eastern temptress, corrupting noble Antony. But the truth was far more Roman than they liked to admit. She wasn't seducing. She was ruling. Their defeat at the Battle of Actium ended more than a love story. It shattered a diplomatic vision decades in the making. Cleopatra's life ended with a snake's bite, or perhaps poison or even political murder, but her legacy didn't vanish. She had shown that marriage was more than union. It was strategy, empire, survival. But she wasn't the first. Before Cleopatra, there was Olympias, mother of Alexander the Great. And Olympias didn't play the marriage game, she rewrote it. Long before Alexander stormed across Asia, before Persia fell to Greek fire and ambition, there was a girl named Olympias, born into the royal house of Epirus. She was clever, devout, and above all else, ambitious. Her marriage to King Philip II of Macedon wasn't love, it was calculation, a political union forged to bind rival kingdoms. But Olympias didn't step quietly into court life. She arrived in Macedon like a thunderstorm, fierce, unbending, mysterious. She worshipped in the wild rites of Dionysus, whispered to snakes, slept beside them, it was said. Rumors swirled that she had divine blood, and that her son Alexander did too. She encouraged it. Let them believe he was born not from man but from gods. Philip, her husband, had other wives, many. Each marriage was a strategy, each queen a threat, but Olympias bore the heir, and she intended to keep him on the throne. The court boiled with tension, intrigue, poisoned whispers behind velvet curtains. When Philip married a younger Macedonian woman, it wasn't just jealousy that burned in Olympia's chest. It was fear. The new wife was native-born. Her children would have a stronger claim. Then came the wedding. Philip walked proudly through the celebration, drunk on power, maybe just drunk, and someone no one ever proved who struck him down, assassinated publicly, brutally. Some whispered it was Olympias who ordered it. Others said it was her allies. No one could say for sure. But within hours she returned to court, not as a grieving widow but as queen regent. Alexander, just 20 years old, took the throne. And while he marched off to conquer Persia, it was Olympias who stayed behind, ruling in his name, watching, calculating, striking. She executed rivals, burned enemies, sent letters across the known world in her son's name. Her rule was not ceremonial, it was absolute. Even after Alexander's death in Babylon, she didn't stop. She fought for the legacy of her grandson, tried to hold the empire together through bloodlines and betrayal. When challengers rose, she met them not with diplomacy but with execution lists. Eventually they caught her, surrounded her, executed her, but by then her legend was sealed. Olympias didn't just give the world its greatest conqueror. She showed it that a woman, properly armed with marriage and fury, could rule empires from behind the veil. Her life laid the blueprint for queens like Cleopatra, queens who didn't merely survive the world of men, but bent it. In the ruthless halls of ancient Rome, where men stabbed each other for a throne, Livia Drusilla never drew a sword. She didn't have to. She married the future emperor Octavian, the man history would know as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. But she wasn't just his wife. She was his shadow, his mirror, his co-architect. Livia entered the world of power already branded by scandal. When she met Octavian, she was still married and pregnant with another man's child. That didn't matter. Octavian wanted her. And what Octavian wanted, Rome would bend to deliver. They both divorced, swiftly. She married Augustus while visibly pregnant with her ex-husband's child. In the rigid world of Roman honor, this should have destroyed her. It didn't. Instead, it signaled a shift. The Republic was gone. The old rules of propriety, of tradition, were being rewritten in real time. Livia bore Augustus no children of her own, and yet her influence was everywhere. She brought her sons from her first marriage, Tiberius and Drusus, into Augustus's orbit, slowly, carefully, the way a spider threads silk across a room. Tiberius, quiet and calculating, would one day wear the purple robe of emperor. It didn't happen by accident. Livia advised Augustus for decades. She wasn't loud, but she was present, always listening, remembering, suggesting. She turned domestic virtue into a mask behind which she practiced the deadliest form of politics, subtle influence. Ancient sources, especially the bitter-tongued historian Tacitus, later accused her of poisoning rivals. Did she? Maybe, maybe not. But what mattered was that Rome believed she could have. In a world where gossip killed reputations, Livia's aura was bulletproof. When Augustus died, he left Livia immense power and wealth, and a name. He called her Augusta. That wasn't just a title, it was a message. A woman could now be divine, revered, not for bearing arms but for bearing the state. Under her son Tiberius, her influence waned publicly, but behind the scenes, the machine she'd helped build kept turning. She had made herself the mother of an empire, not through war, not through sex, but through patience, calculation, and an understanding that real power rarely announces itself. Livia didn't rule with a crown. She ruled with silence. By the time Charlemagne ruled, the old Roman Empire was long gone, but its memory lingered like smoke on the European landscape. He was more than a king. He was emperor of the Carolingians, a ruler whose very name would shape the word king in languages for centuries. He fought wars, crowned territories, built roads, churches, schools. But when it came to marriage, his most fascinating strategy wasn't about who he married, but about who he didn't allow to marry at all: his daughters. Charlemagne married many times. His own unions were tools of diplomacy, forged with noble families and foreign powers. He had at least 18 children, and his court was teeming with wives, concubines, and alliances. But when it came to his daughters, princesses who could have sealed deals from Saxony to Spain, he refused. He refused to marry them off. Not to dukes, not to kings, not to anyone. And this wasn't just stubborn fatherhood. This was calculated control. You see, if his daughters married, their husbands might claim land, might claim influence, might even claim the right to challenge Charlemagne himself. Every princess carried not just a dowry but a claim to blood, to inheritance, to empire. So Charlemagne locked the doors. And the irony, he didn't lock their bedrooms. Many of his daughters took lovers, long-term partners. Some even bore children inside the palace in full view of the court. And Charlemagne let them. He turned a blind eye to scandal because illegitimate grandchildren posed no political threat. Husbands did. To the outside world, it was a contradiction. He enforced public chastity but allowed private arrangements. But inside the empire, it was cold brilliance. By keeping his daughters unmarried, he ensured that no noble family could hijack succession. He hoarded power not just in war but in the womb, but it came at a price. His daughters, royal by blood, lived as half-legitimate figures, not queens, not consorts, not quite courtiers. Their lovers had no title, their children no rank. They moved through palace life as phantoms of what they could have been. And when Charlemagne died, the experiment died with him. His son, Louis the Pious, reversed the policy. He married off female relatives quickly, eager to restore normalcy, to reforge alliances. But Charlemagne had made his point. Marriage, when withheld, could be just as powerful as marriage arranged. He ruled Europe with sword and scripture, but also with silence. And the unspoken message to every noble house was clear: my daughters do not belong to you, neither does my empire. In the heart of Byzantium, power wore robes of gold and spoke in theological riddles. It moved carefully, watched constantly, and was rarely ever granted to women who didn't come from it. So when Theodora rose, an actress, a courtesan, the daughter of a bear trainer, it wasn't just unusual. It was unthinkable. Born in the late 5th century, Theodora's early life was marked not by pageantry but by performance. She traveled with the circus, performed on dusty stages, and lived on the margins of Roman respectability. In the world of Byzantine society, she was at the absolute bottom, and then she met Justinian. He wasn't yet emperor, But he was rising, fast, a reformer, a lawyer, a man who saw in Theodora not scandal but brilliance. He married her. It required a change in law, because someone like her wasn't allowed to marry someone like him. But he didn't care. He changed the rules, and once she became empress, so did she. Theodora didn't sit quietly on a throne and smile for mosaics. She co-ruled. She sat in council. She wrote laws. She influenced foreign policy, religious reforms, tax systems. Her name appeared in legal codes beside Justinian's. She wasn't a shadow, she was a voice. But her defining moment came during the Nika riots when Constantinople, ancient, rich, and seething, erupted in chaos. The palace was under siege. Advisors urged Justinian to flee. It was Theodora who stood up. "If flight is your decision," she said, "there is no problem. You have the ships, you have the sea, but I will not leave. Purple makes a fine burial shroud." That sentence changed history. Justinian stayed, crushed the rebellion, retained the empire because of her. But Theodora wasn't just a woman of state. She was a woman of cause. Her past gave her perspective and her power gave her reach. She fought for women, passed laws to protect actresses, banned forced prostitution, expanded rights for women in divorce and property. She didn't just rule for herself. She ruled for the forgotten, the used, the ones the empire would never crown. Her marriage to Justinian was more than alliance. It was partnership, and that partnership terrified the elite. Because if someone like Theodora could rise, it meant anyone could. Foreign powers watched Byzantium with awe and fear. Behind those high walls was an empress who had crawled from the gutter to the throne and dared to write history. She died young, 48, but her legacy outlived her. The laws she helped shape restructured Byzantine society. The example she set reshaped what power could look like. And the empire she co-ruled, it survived the dark centuries because of foundations she helped pour. Theodora proved that a marriage, when built not on nobility but on mutual vision, could change the world. And in Byzantium, where icons ruled hearts, she became one herself. Born in 1122 in the sun-drenched lands of southwestern France, Eleanor of Aquitaine entered history not quietly, but with power already sewn into her skin. She inherited one of the largest and richest duchies in Europe, not as a token but as the ruler. At 15, she was already the most eligible bride in the known world. Her first husband, Louis VII, the King of France. On paper, it was a perfect match, France absorbing Aquitaine into its grasp through marriage. But on parchment and battlefield, Eleanor was no obedient consort. She traveled with Louis on the Second Crusade, riding through foreign deserts in armor, commanding her own troops and raising eyebrows across Christendom. She was bold, outspoken, political. When they stopped in Antioch, rumors swirled of an affair with her uncle Raymond of Poitiers, a daring and charismatic prince. Truth? Maybe, but scandal? Absolutely. Louis, a pious, fragile man ill-matched for Eleanor's fire, couldn't handle her. The marriage was annulled, officially for consanguinity too closely related. Unofficially, they hated each other. Eleanor barely returned to France before she made her next move, one of the most shocking in medieval Europe. She married Henry, Duke of Normandy, a fiery, brilliant nobleman who would soon become King Henry II of England. With that marriage, she didn't just leave France. She took Aquitaine with her. Suddenly, England didn't just own its island, it now controlled half of France. Eleanor had changed the map of Europe with a single decision. As Queen of England, she gave birth to 8 children, including Richard the Lionheart and King John. But she was no docile mother queen. When Henry grew tyrannical and unfaithful, Eleanor did the unthinkable. She rebelled. She joined her sons in armed revolt against her husband. She raised troops, negotiated alliances, became the beating heart of a domestic war. Henry crushed the rebellion, but he didn't dare execute her. He imprisoned her instead. For 15 years she was confined, 15 years of silence, but she waited, and when Henry died she returned, not as a shadow of power, but as its architect. She governed in the name of her son Richard while he waged war abroad. She arranged diplomatic marriages across Europe. She negotiated with popes and princes. She held courts that would become legends of medieval culture, championing the ideas of chivalry, poetry, and courtly love. Eleanor was no pawn. She was a queen who played kings. Her marriages reshaped France and England. Her womb bore not only heirs but rivals and rulers. Her voice guided empires. And her will, unyielding, razor-sharp, forged in rebellion and silence, made her one of the most influential women in Western history. She died at 82, a staggering age for the medieval world. By then, she had been Queen of France, Queen of England, mother of 2 kings, and the diplomat behind a dozen dynasties. History remembers her not because she obeyed, but because she refused to. In a world built for men, Eleanor carved her name into the very foundations of empire. If Cleopatra used marriage as a survival tool, if Eleanor used it to redraw borders, then the Habsburgs used it to take over the world. From the 15th century into the modern age, they built a machine of empire where the fuel was wedding vows. Their motto wasn't poetic, it was strategic. Let others wage war. You happy Austria marry, and marry they did, obsessively, relentlessly, sometimes horrifyingly. It all began with Maximilian I, a savvy, steel-eyed Holy Roman emperor. He married Mary of Burgundy not for love but for her land. Burgundy wasn't just wealthy, it was vital. Marrying her gave the Habsburgs a slice of Western Europe that France had long wanted. Then Maximilian made his real move. He married his son to Spain. Philip the Handsome, as he was called, wed Joanna of Castile, heir to not one but 2 Spanish kingdoms, Castile and Aragon. Their child, Charles V, a man who would inherit Spain, Austria, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, the Holy Roman Empire, and even lands in the Americas. He ruled not by conquest but by inheritance. No single army had ever conquered so much. But the Habsburgs had no need for swords when they had wombs and rings. But this wasn't just smart politics, it was obsessive. The Habsburgs married cousins to cousins, uncles to nieces, aunts to nephews. Generation after generation, they folded their own bloodline inward, terrified of losing control to outsiders. It worked, until it didn't. By the time Charles II of Spain was born in the 17th century, the dynasty was rotting from the inside. His family tree looked like a wreath. He suffered from severe deformities, was unable to chew food properly, and had such intense health problems that his autopsy reportedly declared he had the body of a 90-year-old. At age 39, his reign marked the beginning of the end. The empire built on marital engineering was cracking under the weight of its own genes. And yet, even in decline, the Habsburgs held more thrones at once than any family in European history. They ruled Austria, Spain, Bohemia, Hungary, and chunks of Italy. They had claims in the New World. They were kings, emperors, archdukes, consorts, and in-laws to half the crowned heads of Europe. It was all built on paperwork, not battlefields. But the strategy had its weaknesses. One failed marriage, one dead heir, and the whole puzzle could collapse. And when it did, wars broke out, fueled not by invasion, but by the absence of a viable Habsburg to sit on the throne. In the end, their empire was not lost in battle. It was choked by its own bloodline. But for centuries, they proved a chilling truth. A marriage can bind more territory than 1,000 soldiers ever could. Born in 1519 into the legendary banking dynasty of the Medici, Catherine was never supposed to rule. She was a girl, a pawn, the daughter of wealth but not of power, or so it seemed. At age 14, she was married off to Henry, Duke of Orleans, the future King of France, a marriage not for love, but to tighten the knot between France and the Pope. Her new life was not welcoming. The French court looked down on her. Henry preferred his older mistress, Diane de Poitiers, and Catherine was pushed to the background, childless, silent, and shadowed. But the shadows were watching. When Henry unexpectedly became king, Catherine's fortunes changed. Then he died, killed in a freak jousting accident, and Catherine rose like smoke through the wreckage. She wasn't queen, she was queen mother. And her three sons, Francis II, Charles IX, and Henry III, would all sit on the throne. But they were young, weak, ill-suited to rule, so Catherine ruled through them. France was unraveling. Catholics and Protestants, Huguenots were on the brink of civil war. Factions gathered like storm clouds. And Catherine, pragmatic and cold, decided to stop it the only way she knew: marriage. She arranged for her daughter, Margaret of Valois, a Catholic, to marry Henry of Navarre, a Protestant. The idea was peace, a union of two faiths, a wedding to heal a nation. It became a massacre. Just days after the celebrations began, Huguenot leaders were slaughtered in their sleep. What started as a royal wedding feast descended into the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, a week of bloodshed that left thousands dead in the streets of Paris and across the country. To this day, historians debate how involved Catherine was. Did she order it? Did she allow it? The answer may not matter, because it happened under her watch, and she didn't stop. She spent the next decade arranging more marriages, plotting more political unions, forging alliances meant to cage the chaos. But every bride, every groom, every altar was just a chess piece. Her kingdom wasn't saved. It was kept barely breathing. She outlived two of her sons. She watched France burn. She saw her daughter become a queen in name and a pawn in truth. And when she died in 1589, her legacy was not love. It was survival, manipulation, blood. Catherine de' Medici proved that in a world where men ruled with swords, a woman could rule with a wedding veil and a knife behind her back.